Hi, my name is Jeff Smith. I'm the project manager for space biology at NASA Ames Research Center. Space biology is hypothesis-driven, discovery-based biological science in space and the associated technology that goes along with it. This is foundational research from which other NASA missions gain important insights and discoveries and knowledge. So why do we do space biology at NASA? We do it to enable human exploration so we may travel further than we've ever been and live safely beyond the protection of Earth. We do space biology to make fundamental discoveries, to understand fundamentally how gravity and the space environment shape life. And finally, we do space biology to enable breakthroughs to improve life on Earth. That knowledge that we gain in space can feed back and come back here to Earth to help develop new procedures, new processes, new therapies that we haven't had before. There are three main products of space biology. One product, and the most important product, is knowledge. This is fundamental research. So knowledge gained from space biology, published in the basic and applied research journals, is a very important product. Technology is also an important product of space biology. We need to develop new technologies to support living systems in space. That's cells, that's plants, that's animals. And that technology has very important applications, and some aspects of that can be brought here to Earth to improve our lives. Finally, there's know-how. Space biology is a process for how we fly good research in space and bring that knowledge back home to Earth. And so that know-how is an important product of space biology. Space biology has three important science goals. The first is to enhance our understanding of fundamental biological processes. Life changes and adapts at all levels in the space environment, and we need to understand individually at the cell and molecular level and at the tissue level, how does that change? How does space change life, and how can we mitigate against detrimental health effects due to space travel? The second goal of science for space biology is to develop the foundations for a safe, productive human exploration of space. We need to fundamentally study plants, animals, cells, and translate that knowledge to humans to help us travel safely further and further beyond the protection of Earth. And then finally, the third space biology science goal is to improve our nation's competitiveness, education, and quality of life on Earth. Now, one of the most important technologies for biological research is the microscope, and space biology is no different. Microscopes have been around for over 100 years, and they're used in many applications here on Earth. In space, there are two types of microscope used. There's the light microscope and the fluorescence microscope. These use generally the same kind of light path in technology and microscopy, but the light microscope uses the visible light spectrum, while the fluorescence microscope uses fluorescence to measure living systems. For light microscopes, there are a lot of cell structure and function and motility measurements that space biologists use. They might want to look at how bone or muscle loss is occurring in space. Or they might want to look at cells in real time in the space environment to see if they're healthy or moving correctly. They may want to use light microscopes for that and look at the visible light spectrum. But fluorescence microscopes are also used in the space environment, and these allow for more sophisticated measurements of specific cells or molecules. One way of using a fluorescence microscope is to do a screening to determine if cells are alive and healthy or dead. By adding a cellular molecular fluorescence probe, you can understand if the cells are alive, if they fluoresce a certain color, or if they're dead, if they fluoresce in a different color. Another way that fluorescence microscopes are used in space is to measure protein expression and where proteins move into cells. This is typically done by attaching a green fluorescent protein to a particular other protein, and when that protein is moving through the cells, it fluoresces in a green color, or it could be a yellow color or red color, and that allows us scientists to look at where the cell is going, where the protein is going in the cell, and what it's doing. This is a very powerful tool for understanding life in space and changes in how they adapt and respond to the space environment. Current microscopes are integrated into the hardware in the space environment. So if we have a cell biology facility or a microbiology facility on orbit for life sciences, and we want to use microscopy, we'll have to attach the microscope directly to that experiment and use it in just that specific way, and that's limiting. What we'd like to do in the future is have the crew use microscopes for real-time biology, like is done on Earth. In that way, the crew may go take a sample from a biological experiment, move it over to the microscope, and then look at it under the microscope. This way they'll be able to see in real time what's going on in that biological experiment, and they can call down to Earth to the principal investigators and talk to the scientists about what to do next. That way, the space station can really become an active laboratory with active ongoing research where the crew and the scientists on Earth are working together. Now, space biology missions at NASA Ames follow mostly the cell and animal and microbiology areas of research. There's invertebrate research, including small model organisms. There's vertebrate research, including rodents and other small vertebrates. We have microorganism research, cell culture research, and some small payloads for plant research. There's also a project at NASA Ames in space biology called Gene Lab, looking at the genetic expression and the genetic function, as well as gene and protein activities in the space environment for many types of biological experiments. Space biology at NASA Ames has a number of ongoing flight projects and facilities. The rodent research we do is mainly associated with bone and muscle and immune and cardiovascular and vascular systems research. The fruit fly lab that we have is for doing model organism research with this important biological model, the fruit fly. Most of the fruit fly research is related to stress or infection or cardiovascular disease and how it relates to human or other animal model diseases. Cell Science Facility, the Cell Culture and Cell Science Facility on orbit, will be able to provide an environment for animal and human cell culture experiments. This is very important for Earth-based research in areas of cancer and immune and other cell systems. So in space, the cell culture system will also provide very important feedback and information about those kinds of research areas. The European Modular Cultivation System is a European facility that we use in space biology, and it's a partnership between NASA and ESA. It's typically used for small plant growth experiments now. And there are also a number of micropayloads for a variety of cell and molecular biology experiments. These can be for bacterial or fungal or cells or even for small animals, but they're small payloads, and that way we can rapidly get them to orbit, perform the science we need to perform, and get the answers back for the scientists quickly. Finally, there's a different kind of spaceflight experiment that NASA Ames is engaged with space biology, and that's a nanosat experiment. Nanosats are small free-flying spacecraft that are either launched off of the space station or they're launched off of rockets such as the SpaceX on their way to the space station. And these nanosats can be used as independent biological research experiments in space, and they're mostly important when a very low gravity environment is needed, or there might be something hazardous that we couldn't bring to the space station that we want to do for a biology experiment. And so that's space biology at NASA Ames and the reasons we want to use microscopes for space biology research. So I hope I'll see you in space soon.